Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell. You know what time it is. It is 4 p.m. Eastern on what day of the week is it? We're all so busy we don't even know these days. But it is time for Thrive, the show that is dedicated to really focusing on all this uncertainty and turning it in to your greatest opportunity. I got to tell you, I have an unbelievable guest for you today. We're going to get into some deep conversations and we're going to try to hold this show to 30 minutes, but I don't know that we are going to be able to do that. So we'll start this intro and get started right away. All right, welcome back to Thrive. Let's go ahead and just dive right in. Today's guest is none other than the Denise Hamilton. Now, Denise is an inclusion specialist, strategist. Listen, I want to dive in and I really want to understand that term because, wow, Denise, I don't know about the world that you're living in and working in today, but inclusion, boy, it can have either a very accepted message or a very fearful message. So for our audience, I like to start by just tell our audience who you are, what you do, and we'll start the conversation there.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am Denise Hamilton. I am an inclusion strategist. And what that means is I help organizations actually operationalize inclusion goals. You know, there's a lot of platitudes, a lot of good intentions, but where does the rubber actually hit the road? And I had been an executive leader in executive leadership for over 25 years before I started my company. I know everybody's looking at the baby face and they're doing the math. I'm a lot older than I look. But so that gave me this deep understanding of the bottom line, right? Of the P&L, of how a business is actually thriving and growing. And I also have this deep familiarity and education around how you operationalize inclusion. So that those two superpowers coming together really lead me to kind of become the Olivia Pope of DEI. And I get to come in when stuff is juicy and there are problems and conflicts and create peace and create a way forward, because this is good work. This is honest work. This is important work. And how you do it matters. So that's what I do all day long. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and a consultant.
So let me ask you this. Now I'm like you. I am on the backside of a given age. And when I was coming up, I was the only female in executive in a male dominated, not only industry, but company. And we were just getting on the cusp of, I mean, literally, I think I was hired because I was a female and I didn't have any problem with that. They needed one. I was smart. I was capable. They also needed my perspective. When did the term, well, let me ask you this. How do you define inclusion?
I think this is one of the challenges we have right now, right? There are so many people who are committed to us not understanding each other. They're literally committed to confounding our language, right? So these terms have become, I guess, hijacked to mean everything and nothing, right? So we can have inaction, right? This isn't new, right? Anytime that there's change, there are people who fear change. And so when I think of inclusion, what I think of, and my book is called Indivisible, and it's really based on this concept of inclusion being a value, not a program, not a set of initiatives, but a value, right? So when I think of inclusion, I think of removing barriers that stop the best dancer from dancing, right? Anything that gets in the way of talent being able to be maximized, to be fully participant. When I define indivisible, for me, it's very much, what is the giftedness? Are we aware of the magic, the value, the specialness of each and every person, and how their gifts roll up to the goal, right? With the broader unity, right, of what we're trying to accomplish. And so I have a recurring nightmare. It is that the cure for cancer was already born. It was just born in the wrong neighborhood. We have a habit of underdeveloping talent. We just do. That's kind of how we've been moving. And So when I work with organizations, what I'm trying to do is look for and listen for echoes, hangovers from old times of how we used to do things. When I
Mhm.
worked in commercial real estate, for example, when I worked in commercial, so I was, the first and only Black person in the top 10 companies in a 6-state region. I
Yeah.
was a leprechaun riding a unicorn on the back of a rainbow,
Right.
right? So when you're in these spaces and you're navigating them, you want to create opportunity for everyone to contribute and everyone to participate. And if you keep people out for arbitrary things, I mean, I know there was one prize they gave out. If you were the top sales team, you got a beautiful, beautiful custom monogrammed men's dress shirt. As tempting as that prize was, Meredith, I don't have to tell you that was not exactly a prize to me, right?
Yeah.
These are leftovers. They're echoes of how it used to be done. So, do we have an intentionality of how we remove these unnecessary hurdles so that we can really thrive and really be competitive? Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to win, make money, be successful, and we need the giftedness of every single member of our team to be able to do that.
Yeah, when I got hired into corporate America, and I got hired in a lot, I do think my boss was searching for a female, and I think he was searching for a female because of the gifts that I brought to the table, and it did take the team to another, to another level. But help me understand, first of all, why has inclusion gotten such a either fully embraced or such a negative connotation? The other is do most people are we excluding mostly based off comfort and blind spots, or what's going on there?
So it's a complicated question because it really is the bigger translation for your question is, why do people resist change?
Right.
You talk about this so much in your work. Like, this isn't different than any other change,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
I've been doing it this way for a long time, and it's the hell I know, and
Yeah.
I'm familiar with this. And also, I think there is a deep fear that this change, I don't know how to criticize this change. I don't know how to interact with it because I'll be labeled a bad person, right? And nobody wants to be a bad person. Everyone thinks they're the good guy in this story, right? And so when you have a set of behaviors that are really just habits and old practices that you might need to excavate, there can be this temptation to defend them, to protect them, rather than finding the courage to interrogate them. But we see this in every change. There are organizations that are industries that are being toppled by AI, right?
Yeah.
Total disruption. And there are people saying, I'm not going to do it. Okay. You don't have to do it. It's gravity. You don't have to believe in it. It believes in you, right?
Right.
So I think that this resistance, has been kind of codified, and it's a part of the change. It's a part of any kind of sociological change. It happens over years, not months, right? So I think this is a resistance that I budget into my work. But I think it's been weaponized, quite frankly, because people love the status quo. They love what's familiar, what's normal, what's regular. There have been a lot of studies done that say homogeneous groups make faster decisions and they're happier with them. I'm going to say that again. Homogeneous groups make faster decisions and they're happier with them. Translation: efficiency and morale.
Yeah.
Meredith, that's tough to beat. That's
Yeah.
tough to beat. So when you come along and you say, well, wait a minute, why don't we flip that upside down? Or wait a minute, how come we didn't do it that way? It doesn't mean it's going to be the right decision. I didn't say they make the right decisions. I say they make fast decisions and they're happier with them. So you need to understand that when you come into the space, you're a disruptor.
Right.
They've been sailing along with a shorthand and a kind of name that tune kind of twin telepathy, right? And then you come along and say, well, why don't we do it this way? And you're kind of a rabble rouser and a troublemaker. But
Right.
I believe that gets to the best decisions. It gets to the best outcomes, because
Oh, yeah.
that iron is sharpening iron. But that process is really not comfortable. And that's what we see. We see a resistance to anything that's going to disrupt kind of the status quo.
Yeah. It's not surprising to me that homogeneous groups make decisions faster and they're happier with those decisions. I mean, part of the reason that I go and ask you your opinion is because I want you to agree with me. Because now it's validated and I'm happy. The moment you challenge me, then now this is harder and I have to work at it and maybe I have to think. But let me ask you this. Uh, how I feel like when I was coming up, it was the dark ages. I mean, I moved into a part of the country that, most women didn't work at that time. Most women stayed home with their children. Here I was in the working world. I made men very uncomfortable because there I was on the golf course and all those types of things. Some men, a lot of them really, embraced, but I was different. I was unusual, but I didn't feel it as divided as I feel it now. Like the desire to be with a homogeneous group. I was talking with a client yesterday who said, I can't even bring politics up. I'm scared to death because if nobody wants to listen and nobody wants to talk. How did we get here?
Mm. Well, I mean, it sounds trite, but I do think it's social media.
Yeah.
I do think that we underestimate, some of the smartest people in the world are deeply invested in our rage.
Hmm.
People don't, share funny videos nearly as much as they share hateful ones. They
Yeah.
don't sit and go deep diving down a rabbit hole and sit online for 3 hours watching jokes. They do it to be outraged. And so we have this perverse incentive of monetizing our outrage and our frustration and our anger. So this idea of, why is inclusion, even the question, why is inclusion getting such a bad rap? Is it? We were just talking, like, I'm traveling every
Because social
week.
media. Right.
Organizations are bringing me in. They care about this issue. They're deeply invested in figuring this out. So
Right.
there's a desire to kind of build a narrative around us hating each other because, man, what if we got together? We might actually solve some problems, right? And
Mhm.
not everybody wants the problem solved, right?
Right.
It's very hard for people um, to kind of examine these issues, these global kind of macro issues with their kind of limited scope on the world. They don't really understand. Hey, every time you forward that hateful story, even if you disagree with it,
Yeah.
to say, isn't this terrible? Isn't this horrible? You are feeding it and you're fueling it. And
Right.
it's so hard because it's not how we think, right?
Mhm.
We want to defend, we want to protect, we get outraged so easily. And the idea that we literally have a deleterious force that is trying to weaponize that,
Yeah.
right? When people are spending millions of dollars on ads to make us disagree, even when the ads aren't true.
Right.
One of my favorite stories. I listened to Neil deGrasse Tyson,
Yeah.
the famed astrophysicist, and he was talking about how language really limits science. So we put ourselves at the center of every story, right? We're the star of every story. And so we name things that way. So we would say something like the tide goes in and out because from our subjective observation, it looks like the tide is going in and out.
Mhm.
That's not really what's happening. The earth has two bulges of water on it. And as we move through and rotate, we rotate in and out of those bulges of water. Now, I kind of thought about that. I couldn't stop thinking about that.
Yeah.
My gosh, like our language even gets in our way. Because if you're doing scientific experiments and your foundational belief is wrong, you're never going to get the right result. So
Yeah.
it made me think of the term sunset, right? Same concept. The sun doesn't set, the earth sets.
Right.
You and we are persuasive, amazing, dynamic speakers. We're going to go around the world and change the term from sunset to earthset. Meredith, I don't know if we have enough hours in the day for that. And what the point that I get from that is it doesn't matter if it's true. I
Yeah.
want you to really think about that. We know that it's not true. It's not a sunset, it's an earthset. We have objective scientific data that says that. but how hard would it be for us to change people's mind, to change their language, to change their belief system? It would be incredibly difficult because people love their stories.
Mm-hmm.
They love the ideas that they have in their head. Like, I know as you talk so much about thriving in uncertainty, right? And one of the reasons that people can't thrive in uncertainty is
They
they're
can't.
committed to yesterday's story.
Yeah.
Yesterday is over and gone and history, but they're so anchored to it that they miss out on the possibilities of tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So when we think about the environment that we're in, the very, very hard work is figuring out how to disagree without destruction,
Mm-hmm.
how to solve problems instead of attacking people, how
Yeah.
to refocus our energies on the problems we want to solve, look for common ground, and get back to the, I don't know, compromise, statesmanship, all of these concepts that we used to value. This social
Right.
media environment has now made expensive and toxic. You win because you didn't compromise. You're a
Right.
hero because you just said no. How do you solve problems like that? How do you move the ball forward? So I think it's really, really important for us to take a step back and to really think about who we are in this story, who do we want to be, and to understand like it's our generation's turn to write the next chapter of this American story. What's
Yeah.
it going to say? We hated each other. We couldn't
Right.
figure out how to solve problems. We couldn't figure out how to talk to each other. That's unacceptable.
I agree. This is such an interesting subject because, like you, I consult, and I've got. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to start talking and writing about thriving in uncertainty is because people are so stuck with it. The moment that the obstacle becomes something that they are uncomfortable with, people freeze. And I wanted to create a methodology and a way to say, you know what, here's the path. I promise you, if you do this, you'll be okay. And there's two strategies that I think are interesting that go along with this. And one is it's called condition yourself for change. But a lot of times when I talk about it, I talk about embracing the suck, a military term. Is that the idea is that people who thrive in uncertainty don't like what is in front of them. Like, for example, maybe I don't like the fact that we're, including people that I have never wanted to work with before. Or I'm uncomfortable with the fact that, this isn't like it was 10 years ago. But I embrace it and find a way to work with it. The second is that once you understand what your obstacles and your challenges are, it is about competition becomes collaboration. That you'll really see that people thrive in an uncertain environment. They stop competing and they start working together. But I want to share a story with you that I think is interesting because I really want your insight on how to kind of move this needle. I sometimes find myself getting caught in this trap. Like I was doing a consulting job for a company, and I'm really sure I'm right on what we're doing. I mean, very sure I'm right. And they hired a young woman who challenged some of my stuff. And I immediately, you could feel every hair kind of stand up and some kind of need to start to prove myself. But then I did what you said and I kind of walked away and I relaxed. And the truth was, she was 150% right. Her way was so much better than mine. I mean, so much better than mine. But it was interesting to me that, I caught myself in the moment. And I don't know that you ever stop that. I think it's human nature to want to defend. But how do you, as I work with leaders, I think getting leaders to get from that point of not trying to stop themselves from resisting, but backing up and being mindful about the validity. When I got under the validity of it, I was just insecure. I mean, that's all that was. But to get back up under that validity, because I don't think you can collaborate until you're 100% open to letting go of your idea and that somebody else's idea may be better than yours.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I mean, a lot of this is fear.
Yeah.
It's just regular old fear. And I started in my professional speaking business. I started speaking almost exclusively to women, and folks would bring me in, and I would speak to 1,000 women or 5,000 women or all the female employees of IBM or whatever. And I started to get a little convicted because I was telling these women what they could do and what was possible at their organization, but I didn't really know.
Yeah.
Right? Because I hadn't spoken to the leaders of those organizations. And I started asking for closed door sessions to speak to the leadership so that I can make sure what I'm telling these women they can do with your company, they can actually do. And that gave rise to a whole section of my business that's really just closed door, private, never to be divulged sessions with leaders.
Yeah.
And they're scared. They're uncomfortable. They know how to sell sprockets, but they don't necessarily know how to do this inclusion thing.
Yeah, right.
There's this fear of saying the wrong thing or making a misstep. And I think that we, in this kind of Instagram culture of putting forth a facade of who we are, rather than having the courage to be humble, to ask questions, to let yourself make a mistake. One of the big challenges I encourage people is we have to let people up. We have to let people make a mistake and say, I'm sorry, and get up and move forward to the next day, right? What's the goal? The goal is that we all work well together and we're productive and we're just out here killing it. That's what we're trying to do. It's not my job to make you smaller or wipe you off the board, right? I want us to figure out how to talk. And so what I found in these sessions with leaders is when I shut the door and it was just us, they could really talk and they could really ask questions and they could really figure out what a strategy was that they felt comfortable with, that they could really enact with full confidence. And I think that we need to figure out how to create space for growth.
Right.
That everyone in this discussion is growing, is figuring out how to do things differently. We have got to find a deep humility. It is humility to say, I wasn't right about that. I'm not 100% sure that's the way to approach that. Or maybe this could be done differently. That takes a deep humility. And so these are issues of deep character from where I'm sitting.
Yeah.
And the problem with the approach that we have to inclusion today is we look at it like a program, right?
Yeah.
We have this deep desire to apply all these metrics to it, right? And I understand corporate dollars, we want a return on investment. I understand that. But how do you measure courage? How do you measure integrity? It's a value. Let's say we were going to measure motherhood, right? You give your child a place to sleep, you feed them, you take them to school every day, right? We're going to pick 5 metrics. You can be knocking it out the park on all 5 metrics. But if you beat your child half to death every night, you're not a good mother. So we've reduced a lot of these efforts to simple things like Noah's Ark. We have 2 of each kind. We've reduced them to things you can measure instead of focusing on what's the value here that we're trying to enact and trying to weave and braid into the culture of our company. And I've seen that. We've done it. I work a lot with energy companies, oil and gas companies. And if you worked in oil and gas, you were going to lose a finger or an eye, it was so common, right? It was every single person had a story of an injury. Now, fast forward 20, 30 years, now they count the number of days since the last incident. If you go to a meeting at a large oil company, they have a safety minute in the meeting in the office building. That's how much safety has been woven into the culture of these organizations. That's the goal, is to make it a value and move away from a program.
Yeah, and I think I think there needs to be a lot more conversation and understanding and forgiveness. You were talking about the shirt you got that was a man's shirt. I played a client of mine was so happy he got me in this really exclusive golf tournament. The connections in it were unbelievable, and he really pulled a lot of strings to get me in there. And I made great connections. But the gift was a men's golf club and a men's golf shirt, and he was so apologetic, and I just laughed. I said, "It's not a bit. I mean, I get that. Let's do better next time." It wasn't intentional to exclude me. It was an oversight because it was all men in the event, and I feel like there needs to be give and take on that side too, because a lot I know when I'm working, I feel like a lot of people step in it sometimes without realizing they stepped in it. And at least if they're trying, what we're going for, I think, is progress, not perfection.
I agree. Now, if you come back next year,
yes, right.
the following year, and the following year, and I think that's the problem too. Right? on one hand, we do need to let people up and let people grow and give people a chance, right? But on the other hand, we also need to be careful not to just make excuses and continue with bad behavior. Like once you've been informed and alerted, that's an opportunity to upgrade and figure it out and make the changes that need to be changed. And I think sometimes where the frustration happens is when instead of making the changes, there's an argument or there's resistance. I literally just a couple years ago, I wish I could say it was 10 years ago. It was not, was in a conversation where, why can't we have meetings at the strip clubs anymore? Sir, we're gonna have to move on. We're gonna have to move forward and move on. So I think it's like, this is a negotiation. This is a dance of figuring out, well, what does this look like? And I think of inclusion on a continuum, 10 being the people that have read all the books and know all the terms and do all the things. And 1 being the folks that don't even know what the letters DEI stand for. And we love to think that everybody's at that 10, that 8, 9, 10 end. The bulk of people are in the middle because we're tolerant of people like us. And then way more people are at that 1 to 3, 1 to 4 level than we'd like to honestly admit. And if we don't find a way to celebrate moving from 1 to 3 and 2 to 4, this party doesn't move forward. Like we can't just leave 30% of our workforce behind. We've got to figure out ways to kind of make small movements every single day on a consistent basis. It's really important.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I have now on occasion, if I'm traveling somewhere good, we were talking about that before, my husband might come on the trip with him. And I'm amazed, even at this day and age, how many times the spousal opportunities at a conference will be like, my husband's taking a cooking class. He's, and it's funny, like there's no thought that it may be the female attending the conference and to have that. But again, one time, get it. The next time, if it keeps happening, that's where the challenge is. Let me ask you this. It's hard to believe, but we were about at time. Here's something I love about inclusion, and I want the audience to understand. This isn't just talk. It has impact on a company. And what is the impact of really embracing and getting good and investing in and caring about and committing to, basically an inclusion strategy in your company, in the heart of inclusion? I mean, really making people feel emotional about it.
I think it's are you truly open to fresh new ideas?
Yeah.
When I think about inclusion, I think about tech companies.
Yeah.
There was a time where if you were working at a big company, you had to wear a suit and a tie and a dress shirt and hard shoes and whatever. And then the tech boom hit, and all of a sudden you could wear a hoodie and you could have tattoos and you could have gauges in your ear. Why? Because that skill set was so valuable that they had to change the dress code and the norms in order to graft this new population of employees in. And the rest is literally history, right? It's literally history. That's what inclusion is. Bringing in different perspectives, different ideas, and removing barriers that don't really make a difference. It didn't really make a difference if you had a dress shirt on or if you had a hoodie. Can you code and get this work done, right? And so are we cheating ourselves out of incredible talent that could add so much to our discussions, to our product development, to our customer interactions? Does our workforce look like the audiences and the people that we serve? I don't know, how could you possibly think you can serve an audience when you don't have any of those people represented in your workforce? Like, that doesn't even make sense. And then last but not least, younger generation, as they enter the workforce, they're not looking to be in an old, stale environment. They want to see that it's dynamic and fresh and open to new ideas and creative and innovative. And one of the biggest signal boosts of that is when they see that the teams are diverse and that you're open to ideas. It says this is a company that really gets it. Yeah. And you don't have to evolve. You could be a great company that used to be on Front Street, or you can be a company of the future. And so to me, that is what inclusion is about. It's harnessing the best gifts so you can be the best company.
I think that it is, I can't say enough about what you just said, that I feel like when I work with my organizations, and I'll say when we're developing talent, next level leaders, you have got to look out and start to look like your customer base. I have a company that my husband does some work with, and if he passes first, I'll inherit that company and I won't be there. And the reason I won't be there is I don't see myself anywhere in there. I don't even have to see myself. I just have to see something different. It doesn't have to be me, but it has to be something different.
Yeah. And also I would say, like, when you are a business leader, you are positioning yourself as an advisor to your client, right?
Yes.
How are you an advisor to your client if you can't even solve your own problems?
Right.
You don't even know how to develop talent within your organization. Like, I work with a lot of clients where they'll have like one manager that has had 70% turnover of every woman that has worked there within first year of employment. And I'm like, how in your mind is that manager an asset if they're churning this many
Right.
people? Like, why do we move the goalposts of what's just good behavior, good leadership, and core skills that are just
Yeah.
professional management? Like, one of there's a bank that I worked with that they've been around for the 1800s. What do you mean you can't find talent? You
Right.
literally could have raised talent in a petri dish.
Yes.
As long as you've been around. Like, when you can't position yourself as a trusted advisor to me and give me excuses about why you can't solve or the basic challenges of our time, right? And that's what younger workers come into the workforce, we sound ridiculous when we present these excuses of why you can be a $1 billion company, but you just can't figure this out. You can figure it out. You just have to decide that it's a priority, and you have to take the steps to make it happen. And that's what we do in all the other areas of business. So let's do it here too.
Yeah, I think it's a level of disruption that if you don't adopt it, I don't think you're going to be here in the next 10 to 15 years, in my opinion.
Same.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. All right, we always end with two questions, and I don't care any order that you answer them. So, with businesses out there struggling in the face of uncertainty, and there's a lot of uncertainty out there, what is your best piece of advice? Your one area that you think that they need to focus on, and that they took advantage of it would put them in a better position. And then, of course, how do we find out more about you and your work around inclusion, which I think is so unique that that's why I wanted to have you on the show.
Okay, I'll do the first one first. How do we, what do I tell them to do?
Yes.
Listen. We need to figure out how to deeply listen. We need to learn how to suspend the stories that are living inside of us, right? And just really listen to what is being said. What are our clients saying? What are our employees saying? What are the changes? That's how we're going to figure out where the puck is going, rather than, just kind of coasting along. I was, one of the concepts in my work that's really important to me is this idea of stories.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember the story of Rapunzel, right?
Yeah.
Inappropriately long hair, stuck in a tower, no door. And she helps the witch get in and out of the tower with her hair. She helps the prince get in and out of the tower with her hair. Girl, it was your own hair.
I know.
I was in my 40s before that ever even occurred to me, right? We have stories that what we're capable of, what can happen, what's the truth, who's the good guy, who's the villain, who should live happily ever after. It's not true. Some of them are just not true. And so this deep listening is going to give us the information to kind of interrogate those stories, right? Which is going to make us better in almost everything that we do. Collecting information and trying to listen authentically, listen to stuff you don't like, listen to the other side of the argument, listen to the minion at the bottom of the food chain. Just listen. Powerful listeners are incredible leaders, and they are leaders that will take us in the next decade.
I so believe that the path to profitability and growth lies in listening. Great.
Yeah. And where you can find me, I am everywhere at Official D Ham, on all the socials, and denisehamilton.co. .com. There's a long story. There's another author named Denise Hamilton, and she has my URL. We'll talk about it later. It's a bitter subject. But DeniseHamilton.co, or just, Indivisible Now if you want to get the book. And I appreciate you saying it's a different approach, because it is a different approach. I think we need a new goal. We need a new target. I believe if we could figure out how to be indivisible, we would be indestructible. We need to remind ourselves what the real goal is.
Yeah. And again, I really did reach out because I'd kind of heard some people talking about your work, and I thought that's such an innovative approach to it. And I think I so agree with what you said, that so often we check boxes. It's like, I've done this, and we're wired that way. And these things are a little more complicated than that and complex than that. And because of that, there's far more value in them, but you got to roll your sleeves up, and you got to be willing, you've got to be willing to get to work on it. But thank you again so much for your time today. It's just been an amazing interview, really enlightening. We'll include the book in the show notes. Look for this to come out in a podcast. And for all my listeners, we'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Thrive. And we are going to go together to turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. I believe that.